So I've got the absolute pleasure of introducing a real mentor of mine, James Victore. I met James at the Do Lectures 8 years ago, a long time ago, and he's become a really good friend and an absolute leader in the work that I do. And I wanted just to kind of introduce him in an informal way before I read you out his massive list of great stuff he's done. I went to New York a few years ago and wanted to hook up with James. So I rang him and he answered the phone, which is a first. And we said we'd hook up and meet up in a corner in Williamsburg. And I was really nervous. I was having a bit of a shitty time. And I'm stood on the corner and I thought, well, I can't remember what he looks like. What's he drive? And then this fucking massive ute comes around the corner. This four-wheel drive pickup with a cowboy in the front. And I thought, that's James, big old Tash, driving towards me. And I thought, now this could go one of two ways. This could go very Brokeback Mountain. I'm in touch with all that shit. I'd have gone with it. He's a lovely man. I'm straight, but he'd turn me. Or we could just get on really well. And we got on so well. And I learned from him with every tweet, with every conversation, and with every post. So, James, thank you. The formal introduction. He is a fire starter. And he starts a fire in you. His aim is to help you find your voice. And there's nobody who's taught me more about being utterly true to the little weird kid that I was than James is. And you'll know his quotes. You'll know the words he says. He comes out with just pithy arrows that go straight to the heart of the matter. Part Darth Vader, part Yoda. His new book, Feck Perfection, has become a design bestseller. What many people don't know about James is he won the USA's only facial hair talent competition, Moustache Idol. James, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Are we on? It is very fitting that I am speaking today because I come from the greatest state in the Union, and back home, it is July 4th. It is Independence Day. And in that spirit, I would like to say, fuck Donald Trump. So, we got work to do. By the way, I have 20 minutes to speak. That's tough. So, no laughing and no clapping whatsoever because it cuts into my fucking time. So, let's get to work. Speaking of books, this book, this is the one you should be reading. I'm assuming some of you got it for free in your bags. Do not take advantage of free. It's good shit. It's called Feck Perfection, worst title in the world. Can't say it, can't spell it. I type it wrong every time. So I want to talk to you about this book, and I think the best way to talk about this book is in a story, since we're here at the Do Lectures and it's all about stories. So Feck Perfection is everything. It's everything I have learned from studying, from research, from voluminous reading, from teaching at universities for 25 years. And it's everything that I use in my own life so that I can wake up every morning hungry and horny and willing to make work that matters, right? For example, one idea in the book is just start. Just start. Starting is the hardest part, right? Generally, people start by stopping. For example, you guys. You're here, and you're gonna, like David said, you're gonna take notes, and you're gonna say, oh my God, when I get home, my career is gonna like that. And I'm gonna tell you, no, you're not. Because you're gonna write this shit down, and you're never gonna get around to it. So just fucking start. Also, Mark gave you some rules, but I'm here to say there ain't no rules. What we do, if you are creative, if you have a creative bone in your body, I don't give a damn what field you're in. If you are creative, there ain't no rules. You know what I do for a living? I make shit up. and people pay me well for it. It's a great gig. It's because I am the makers of manners, Shakespeare, right? I call the shots. I make the rules. There ain't no rules. It's about that inner critic. You know, you think you have haters online. You think your friends and your family are your critics. Your worst critics are these, the invisible bastards in your head. You know, there are friends who I have in my life who I don't see anymore because I can't take it. Constantly calling themselves too fat, constantly calling out how dumb they are, right? Who doesn't have these inner critics in their lives? My whole existence is dealing with these things, facing them daily, right? Kill the critic. Also, an idea that was important to me is my father, who taught me how to be a carpenter, and he had no skills whatsoever, who taught me everything I know, who taught me discipline and grit and fortitude, and who last year died from 20 years of degenerative Parkinson's disease, never complained a fucking day. Never complained once. He taught me that shit happens. Suffering is a choice. So, bunch of crazy words on the cover, feck and perfection, and I know for a fact that people buy this book because they pick it up because they're like, what the fuck? Right? I like that. That's awesome. But the subtitle is Dangerous Ideas on the Business of Life, and that's the most important word. These are dangerous ideas because they're dangerous to your ego. They're dangerous to your sense of self-worth or your lack of worth. They're dangerous to who you hang around with. They're dangerous and a challenge to your lifestyle. And they're dangerous because creativity is dangerous because that's its fucking job. Creativity is dangerous. Creativity is new, and creativity is innovation, and we hate new. And innovation, anything that's truly innovative, signifies the death of what came before, right? So creativity is dangerous. I, as a teacher, especially at university, I don't like creative kids in my class. Do you know why? Because they disrupt. Because that's their fucking job. Creativity is dangerous. So I said I wanted to talk about a story. This is a story. I love anything with rubber tires. Preferably 2, right? I have a number of different motorcycles. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they have their own sets of wheels. We're a wheelie family, right? And I live in a blessed place in Texas where I have an opportunity to ride on a motocross track, out on a mountain about an hour away, and on my own property. Okay? One bike in particular that I like is a trials bike, and it is a funky motorcycle with no seat and a swoop back, right? Super torquey, super strong, extra light. And what this bike allows you to do is climb up and over things you're not supposed to climb up and over. It allows you to ride in places where you're not supposed to ride. By the way, is Claire here? Claire or David? Oh, I could rip this place up. This is the rocks, the stumps out there, to pop, 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 and oh, God, I'm walking around going, look, I'm looking at lines going, come on. So here's the story. It starts like this. I do not remember the accident. It was December 14th, end of last year, and I was riding on my property. And I remember I was riding in this, my favorite spot, and it's this wet, rocky ravine, right? You ride down, and you pop it up, and then you ride down some rocks, and then you come back and fucking blast. So I got this notion in my head, and I was coming up the other side of the hill, and I said, you know, I think I'm done. Let me turn around and go back, have a beer, get some work done. And I don't remember what happened, honestly. I think I blipped, and I didn't cover the clutch or cover the rear brake. I don't remember. But I do explicitly remember a very loud snap. And I think I blacked out, because I woke up in this ravine on my side, just like they do in the movies. You ever see when somebody wakes up from a blackout in the movie, they're just like, it was like that. And I had a couple of realizations. One, the first one was just the pain. I just popped up to my feet, and I grabbed my arm, and I was like, oh, fuck. And the second realization was, I don't have my phone. So my second realization was, you're an asshole. That was not smart. So what I did was I grabbed my arm, and I left the bike there, and I realized I had to walk a half a mile to the house, and there was nobody at the house. So I grabbed my arm, and I'm walking very slowly to the house, and I'm taking little tiny sips of air so I don't black out. And I remember stopping at one point, and then my brain said, no, you will not get going. Do not stop. And I got to the house, and I called my father-in-law, who smartly called the EMT, and they came and picked me up and took me to the hospital. And in the hospital, they told me that I had broken my clavicle, I had broken all of these ribs, and I separated my lung, right? So the x-rays look like that, basically. The good parts were they serve beer in the hospital, which is cool. I'll just leave that up there for a second. And I married an angel. My wife Laura helps me gain perspective about my life and about work, and swoops in when everything kind of falls to shit. This is interesting. That little thing on my shoulder is actually a tube going into my lung, because my lung was bleeding at the time. Good news is I was home by Christmas Eve. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, so it was super important that I get out of. I was in rehab at that time, and I got out in time. And in case you were wondering, the bike is fine. I think it's supposed to do that. I think they do that. So, listen, like everything in my life, the accident happened for the right reason and at the right time. Like everything in my life, it happened for the right reason and at the right time. My wife reminds me of a mantra that I use often. And whatever situation, I'm terrible at airports. I get nervous at airports. I'm like, I'm going to miss my flight. Do I have a seat? I have a seat? Do I have a seat? I have a seat. I have a seat. Like, I'm terrible. And she reminds me and helps me with this mantra that says, everything is always working out for me. Right? And the reason that this was at the right time and for the right reason is because I needed a teacher. I was entering a new part of my life. And if you have any idea of the work of Viktor Frankl, you will understand that you have no friends. You have no enemies. You only have teachers. And if you can wrap your head around that, everything in your life is a gift. Everything in your life is an opportunity to grow in some way. So you have no friends, no enemies, you only have teachers. And when I was in the hospital, I was jacked up on so many painkillers. They put an epidural. That's like the nightmare of mine. Of like when I heard that thing existed, I thought, oh my God, that must be the worst thing in the whole world. And it was. It took this woman half an hour to get it in my spine. It was so bad. So I had an epidural. I had 3 different narcotics and ketamine, and it was still, the pain was insane. The pain was so fucking bad. And Laura, being my angel, she said, James, I get a little emotional with this stuff. She said, James, your heart needed to grow, and your body needed to make way. And of course, for me, I just thought, well, you mean like the Grinch, right? So here's the interesting thing. Here's the lesson. Here's pain. So before the accident, I was fearless. I made every decision I made in my life was for love or for creativity. I never made decisions based on money. I was fearless and dangerous in my career, took professional chances all the time. Now comes the pain. And I was made to feel something I didn't think I would ever feel in my life. I was made fearful. I was made weak. This arm hung 4 inches lower than this one. All these muscles atrophied, right? So I was presented with a choice. I could do as others do. I could do as you do. I could run from the pain. I could still be on the meds, right? I could say, oh, it's okay. I'll just never play beach volleyball again. That's cool. I don't like that sport anyway. I'll never be able to take my son and put him up on my shoulders. So I could run from the pain, and I could let that pain make my life smaller every day, every week, every year, as most do. Or I could understand that this pain is my teacher, and I need to face it, I need to address it on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, and become bigger and stronger every day, every month, every year. Right? Why do I bring this up? Because it's about you. It's always about you. You, too, are presented with a choice. I'm in my cruising pain. Unless I brought this up in this talk, you wouldn't know. Unless you asked me to, scratch my ass or pour a heavy thing of beer, you wouldn't know I was in pain. I miss scratching my ass. I'm getting there. So I'm in my cruising pain. That means I can get by. I can, okay, I can't do these things, whatever. You are in your cruising pain. For example, the job that you are not looking forward to going back to. How about this? Here's your cruising pain. That feeling Sunday night when you have to go to work Monday. This is cruising pain. Oh my God, thank God it's Friday. I ask my friends, wildly creative guys, doing interesting work. I say, how's work? They go, it's work. I'm like, fuck. You lose. Here's another cruising pain. How many people have an inability to ask for what they're worth? That's one. Another cruising pain. How about the relationship at home that chafes because you've lost the ability to communicate with your spouse, your partner, right? Fix your shit. Fix your shit. Or this body you woke up with. You wake up and you're like, when did that happen? This must be that donut from last week. Right? Because dollars to donuts, what happens if you don't pay attention to these cruising pains of yours, if you don't fix them, they are going to make your life smaller every day, every month, every year. You're going to carry them with you forever. I work with people. People pay me to work through these problems with them. And after week 4 or week 5, I'm having this conversation. We just did it last week, having this conversation with this guy. And I said, listen, if we have this conversation again, I'm going to fucking fire you. Because you're not doing the work. You're not taking care of this. Fix your shit. Because if you don't, your life is going to get smaller. Dollars to donuts. And listen, as a teacher, I understand my role. And my role is not to tell you anything. I cannot tell you anything. But I can remind you of these beautiful, innate gifts that you were born with. I can remind you of these talents that you exhibit daily. I can remind you of the power of your voice and getting that out into the world. and what it feels like. And when you do that properly, when you see others reflected, others' lives reflected in yours, other people using you as an example. I just got this email from a protege from years ago at one workshop I threw. Her name was Lina from Copenhagen. And she wrote me and she said, James, you told me to drop the silly name of my company and use my own name. You told me that in the particular lies the universal. And you told me that I was powerful and I had a voice when I felt lost and worthless. And the next paragraph says, my debut graphic novel illustrating my struggle of being a single mom and a struggling artist just won Copenhagen's #1 graphic novel for 2019. And I'm in all the newspapers, and women from around the country are writing me and saying I'm an example to them. And I wrote her back and I said, Lina, I didn't do anything. I made some suggestions, and I told you some basic truths. You have to do all the work. You have to do all the work. Fix your shit. So the idea of being a warrior and not a worrier is up to you. Because remember, shit happens. Suffering is a choice. You guys rock. I'm James Victori, and I am out of here. Thank you.
Very few words. Amazing. I had warrior not worrier tattooed onto my arm, and I told James about it in a podcast I did with him recently, and he said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I was frightened that I would be a worrier, not a warrior. So I had the warrior bit written big, because then I was frightened I might look at the worrier bit a little bit more." And he said, "You're worried about it, aren't you?" I said, "I'm fucking worried about it." So he said, "Well, cross that fucker out." So I went to see my tattooist because I've just had a granddaughter, and I've just had her tattooed on one arm here. So I went to see my tattooist and said, my mate James said I should cross warrior out. And she said, it's my tattoo, it'll look shit, it's staying on. So it's staying on for the moment, James, I apologise. Amazing, heartfelt, I was really emotional watching that. We're going to get James back for some questions. What we do is we do 2 talks and then we do questions. So next up, we've got Oliver Steeds. Oliver describes himself as, someone described Oliver as 1 part Captain Nemo and 1 part Steve Zuzu. I would add 1 part superhero to that, actually, Oliver, having looked at what you do. He is an ocean explorer, a filmmaker, an investigative journalist, and a broadcaster. His journalistic interests are unbelievably important. Civil wars, politics, human rights. He's exposed illegal trading that funds countries ruling juntas. And 5 years ago, he gave all this up. He gave up journalism and broadcasting to help save the oceans. He nearly didn't. He actually was a latecomer to knitting, and he nearly rebranded himself as the Knitting Yoda. But I'm glad he didn't, right? He founded Necton, which is a marine institute, change of page, that protects the deep ocean to help change our knowledge and understanding of the world's oceans and to speed up protection and governance of it. If the oceans are sick, so are we. Over to you.
Thank you. And that bit about knitting is a pile of bullshit, just to be clear. So this afternoon, I just wanted to share a personal story of hope. And like some great stories of hope, they start with this man, David Hasselhoff, and a crab. So let's start with the crab. Crab lives in an ocean, and our ocean, as many of you I'm sure know, covers about 70% of our planet. It's about 99% of the biosphere on our planet. It regulates our planet's chemistry, our planet's climate. It's the beating heart of our planet. It makes life possible. And back in 2012, the ocean was already in crisis. But back in 2012, one of the major ocean stories was about this crab that was called the Hoff crab because of its passing resemblance to a man who wears Speedos in an extraordinary way. So something was not quite right in the world. Back in 2012, I was a journalist. I was reporting on, as you heard, all sorts of things from human trafficking and women being trafficked from North Korea into China and sold into sexual slavery, corporate corruption, political corruption, the rise of Al-Qaeda, all these horrific things going on in the world. And I was given a book by a friend of mine called Will, good lad, he just published called The Ocean of Life by Professor Callum Roberts. And that book explained the crisis of our ocean. And I read it, and I couldn't fucking believe it. I thought I'd spent all my time on land just researching and investigating the state of our planet, and I'd missed the ocean. So I went around all my commissioning heads and said, look, we've got to start reporting on this. This is absolutely extraordinary. No one is reporting on it. We need to get eyes on this. It's out of sight. It's out of mind. I finally found one commissioner who then sent me up on a mission to reporting up in Scotland, the island of Arran, this small marine protected area, 1 mile squared, which was this beautiful protected area. You dive down and you see this lush forest, this lush field, but it was only a small area, 1 meter squared. And you go out of there and you find that the whole area around there has been trawled. And this is not an aerial shot of a field that's been ploughed. This is a sonar scan of the seabed when trawlers have gone over it. And this is what it looks like once you put a trawler over a reef. It's obviously decimated, destroying the habitats, the nurseries, all those critical things. And the scale of it was absolutely extraordinary. We clear cut about 300 times the amount of our seabed than we do of land every single year. It's like getting a massive fucking great bulldozer and driving it across the countryside, felling all the trees, destroying all the farms, catching all the animals just to scoop up a few cows. And they're doing it at a terrific scale. They're wiping out seamounts that have never been explored, undersea Galapagoses, which have never been researched. There's over 100,000 in the world, and only 50 have ever been scientifically, biologically researched. So this is going on at a terrifying scale. So I started to investigate more and more, and there aren't many places left in the world considered wild. This was it a few years back, and now you may have seen the news of a submarine which went down to full ocean depth. 7 miles down, 11,000 meters down, they found evidence of human impact down there, down to plastic. So nowhere on our planet, nowhere in our ocean is immune from the impacts of our activities. We know we are sleepwalking into a catastrophe. These are just 25 of the tipping points that we are heading towards that will result in the collapse of our ocean system and our ability to sustain life as we know it on our planet. We are walking into catastrophe, and I think it's extraordinary how calmly everyone is sitting in this room today, considering what's happening in front of us. So I started thinking, well, how much do we actually know about the sea? What do we know? And it's all sort of kicked off back in the 1870s with an expedition called the Challenger Expedition, which went out, and that gave rise to the birth of marine science. And this is how little we still know. If you look at deep sea habitats explored today, a fraction of 1% is what we know of our ocean. And the journey of exploration, the human journey of exploration to the deep, began in the 1930s with this guy, William Beebe, and his partner in crime, Otis Barton, in Bermuda. And they went down in this thing into the deep sea. I don't know about you, but yeah, those guys had balls. Of steel, clearly. Boom, boom. Come on. It's hard. Best I got. I'm not here all day, luckily. But what would those people be doing now, these great explorers? And what fueled them was not what they knew, but what they didn't know. And I thought perhaps it's that spirit that we can channel. And that spirit of optimism that can fuel our understanding of ourselves, our understanding and our relationship with our planet. It's not what we know, what we don't know that is really, really critical. You think of the great journeys of exploration, Leif Erikson, Magellan, even the journeys up to outer space, and we turn back the camera and look back at our wee planet, and we saw it's just this floating ball in the black, inky space, the inky blackness of space. And so these journeys of exploration can and often do transform our understanding of who we are. Exploration pushes back the frontiers of our knowledge, and it enables us, and it challenges our understanding of who we are. We all need the unknown. It gives us that sense of mystery, that sense of purpose, that creativity. We all need to explore. So what would the great explorers be doing today? Well, as we found out earlier, the last great frontier on our planet, only a fraction of 1% of our Earth, of the ocean, 99% of our biosphere remains unexplored. And now we have the technology available to us to discover more of our planet in the next 10 years than we have in the last 10,000, the last 100,000. And that is an opportunity. That represents hope. That represents the opportunity for progress. And it's these ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, AUVs, autonomous underwater vehicles, these sensors, all these different systems that are available to us that can power this new journey of exploration. But why are we still looking up when arguably we need to be looking down? And if we think about the sea as a mirror to the sky, perhaps if we can just look at the story of space exploration, maybe that story of space exploration can help inspire the story of the exploration of the deep ocean, our most critical frontier that we need to journey to. And I've sort of split it up, and you look at the space, it's stories that are positive. It's celebrating, it's looking for new life. It's stories that trigger the imagination. It's mission-based. It's narratives of exceptionalism and collective human achievement. The ocean, it's a fucking nightmare. We're killing the oceans. It's mundane stuff about fish and about food security. How do we inspire people with stories like that? They are critically important, we know, but how do we inspire people with a positive journey? So a couple of years ago, back in end of 2015, 2016, I decided to set up Necton. Now, Necton is a zoological noun that describes animals that swim against the current. It was also the code name that the US military gave to the first dive to the deepest parts of the ocean back in 1960 with Don Walsh and Jacques Piccard. They codenamed it Project Necton. So I went to Don and I had this great name, Blue this or Ocean that, and Don looked at it and was like, nah, fuck off. Don't put ocean, don't put blue in it, because everyone else has come up with something new. So I thought, well, how about Necton? And he said, great idea, luckily. So we kind of stuck with that. And our mission is to accelerate our understanding and knowledge of the ocean. Simple idea, our client is the ocean. And we wanted to work with coastal and island nations around the world to help them understand what's going on in their ocean, to help them protect their ocean. And exploration has been something that's driven me for many years. Not particularly well, I have to admit. I'm not a very good explorer. My first expedition was in Mongolia and China. I fell off a horse, bust my arm. Not a good place to do that. Everything seemed to go wrong. We ended up being arrested. The Mongolians thought we were spies, chucked us in jail. We ended up to walk across the Gobi that was about 1,500 miles, which wasn't really planned. On and on it went. You get the kind of... expeditions are really not my key thing. But I love it. I think it's, I believe that exploration can drive our progress. Exploration means so many things to so many different people. We're all explorers. We all have something new to learn. But within the sort of the great pantheon of transformative exploration on a societal level, I think there are 4 pillars to it. One is new knowledge, discovering something new that we can use to push out the frontiers of our knowledge, transform our understanding of who we are. Communicating that, sharing that story. With as many people as possible, getting the story out there of these discoveries, having impact with it. And today, often that means you've discovered something, you're going to have to protect it, because otherwise it's probably going to get wiped out. And then finally, what is the legacy? What's the long-term impact? Often around the capacity that's actually needed for those ongoing journeys of discovery. So we use those as the pillars to anchor what we do as an organization. And we found, we set off in 2016 with our first mission, which was into Bermuda, the Northwest Atlantic, to follow in the bubbles of Otis Barton and William Beebe, who dived there in the 1930s. But it was a place where there'd been biological research going on for many years, decades and decades, a place people thought they kind of knew about. And we thought, well, this is a great place. Let's go and look where no one else has really looked before. And we found an insurance company, an inspired insurance company, XL Catlin, to sponsor us, which is unlikely. But when you understand what is one of the greatest risks to humanity, we managed to convince them that was the case, and they took a deep dive with us on this journey of exploration. And in the following years, 2 years after that, we managed to scrape together enough money to get a ship, a couple of submarines, be at sea for 4 weeks, and start doing some diving. And what we found there over the couple of years after then, as our scientific team started to investigate all the samples we had found and everything else, that we had discovered over 100 new species. But what was remarkable was that the vast majority of those species were in this depth zone from 130 meters down to 300 meters. And this quantity, this diversity of species, had never been found at those depths before, in the water column and on the benthic on the seabed. So what our chief scientist, the brilliant Professor Alex Rogers, and the team started to realize was that we'd found a new ecosystem, a new habitat, a new zone in the ocean that no one knew was there before. And no one knew it was there before because no one had looked. And it turned out to be one of the largest new ecosystems found in the world in decades. And that's what we managed to do on our little pilot mission. So let's come back. One of the other things we wanted to do was try and inspire people with the story of the ocean. What we found was that the submersibles that we used with these transparent pressure holes, what they enabled us to do was for people to actually witness people in the deep sea. And that gave us the vital human link that people needed to reconnect with the ocean. And people were interested. We had a global audience of over 800 million people around the world who were kind of intrigued by what the hell this little charity in from Oxford was trying to and able to pull off. So I don't want to dwell too much on kind of the startup phase of what happens when you do set up an organization when, it was a really tough few years because I left my profession. I knew very little about the ocean, nothing really about ocean science. Just got married. The first kid had arrived. And, to enter into setting up a charity at that point was a very tough ask. And the people who are so often forgotten in these stories are our friends, our partners, who are behind us. Without them, can't fucking do anything. And I made so many mistakes. But it often stems to people, those people behind the scenes who are helping you. But it's also the people you work with. And there was one person, let's not go there. But we had there were problems there. And we nearly destroyed the organization after the first year or two of it. And luckily, this man stepped in, the wonderful Jeff Wilner. I met him in the Congo, as you do. I stumbled out of the forest, having very despondently lost a dance-off to a tribe there called the Mbutis. That's a story for another day. Stumbled into this village, tiny little village, 200 people, and there was Jeff sitting there. He then proceeded to help me get arrested, and then he helped get me out of jail. So a friendship was born. And we'll leave it there for the moment. But after that mission, we decided, all right, what the hell are we going to go and do next? So we looked at it and thought, all right, we need to go to the Indian Ocean. It's the least researched, the least known ocean on the planet. It's the least protected and the most at risk. It's clearly the most difficult place we can go, and for good reason. So we set off on our first mission to try and catalyze the protection of the Indian Ocean. So that was our goal, try and catalyze 30% protection by 2030. That's the scientific consensus, what we need for a safe, prosperous, and resilient ocean. So we started in the Seychelles. I'm just going to show you a quick film about what we achieved on that mission. And we had 2 partners who stepped in. We had 50 partners in total, but Jeff stepped in with his company, Kensington Tours, and Omega stepped in. So we had 2 subs that looked pretty cool. We had to adapt them, and I'll come to that in a minute. But I just want to show you a quick film now of what we managed to do on that on this last mission that we just came back from not long ago, a month or so ago.
For many centuries, the ocean has been very, very close. Part of our own DNA, I would say.
Our mission here in Seychelles is to undertake at least 50 first descents to help inform the protection of 30% of their entire ocean territory.
We use a vast array of different equipment and technologies, and this is because we want to assess the whole of the water column. So not just the seabed, not just the water itself, but all the way from surface to depth.
We really don't have almost any information for everything that is below 30 meters. So the main aim is to have this baseline information that will allow us to understand what's going on in the deeper environments in the whole of the Seychelles.
The story of our aquanauts has captivated audiences around the world because it's an inspirational story, a story of epic human endeavor.
From 124 meters below the ocean surface, it is a privilege to address you, citizens of the world.
absolutely fundamental for organizations like ours to work with and on behalf of a host nation like the Seychelles.
When we met for the first day, you were truthful to my government. And you told me at State House, look here, President, we come into your waters, the data will belong to you. That was the basis of a partnership, which is based on trust. And out of this partnership, other countries will emulate.
So the first challenge you everybody try to embark on something like that is you need a vessel. Now, most of the people who go away at sea are either supported by governments with huge pockets or the offshore energy. So energy industry. We had enough money to scrape together for this ship that's normally used for getting people on and off wind farms or transporting cement. So not ideal. We had to adapt it in a pretty Heath Robinson fashion to work out how you get these subs on and off it. We ripped out the gym and got a kitchen maker in to turn that kitchen space into a laboratory for biological samples, ripped out another container and turned it into a water chem lab, on and on it went to adapt the vessel. We had to turn our fast response craft into a system for seabed mapping. That thing on the right, there's a multi-beam worth to £250,000 worth. But that boat leaked, which is not very good when you've got expensive electronics on board. We had to adapt the submersibles with a whole range of new technologies to actually undertake the research, the sampling that we wanted to do. And when we arrived there on our first locations, what we had and what we found was that there wasn't very much in the way of data. The last maps there were made in the 1890s, and there was no current data. So we dropped the subs in. What we found was that the subs were going down to into the depths, and the currents were just switching in totally different directions. You'd be going along, flying along the side of a mountain down at 250 meters, one direction, 60 seconds, it would have you hooning back the other direction. There's a huge amount of water coming in from the Indian Ocean, being swept up on these remote atolls. That water comes in, massive upwellings, that water needs to come back, downwelling. So our subs were just going like yo-yos, which became very difficult and challenging. And one of the great challenges we had, and I'll just show you a quick clip of what happened, was when we had a fire inside one of the pressure holes at 250 meters.
It's the greatest fear, fire inside the cockpit. Your greatest fear. Where are you going to go?
Participants passing 50 meters, coming up fast, coming up fast.
X-ray situation, smoke cabin.
20 meters, things will be on the surface in a second.
Kensington, do you need oxygen? So when that happens, the protocols are that you've got to turn off your oxygen, you turn off all auxiliary power, it goes to darkness, you then put as much air in your pressure holes as you can, move on to an independent breathing system, and with all that air that you put in into your ballast tanks, you're going to come to the surface as quick as you can. So when the X-ray came in, we knew we had about 6 minutes before they reached the surface. We deployed our rescue boats, the medics, the oxygen, and we waited for them to surface. They surfaced, and fortunately, on this occasion, they were okay. Scared, shitless, but otherwise okay. One of the other things we wanted to do was try and up the ante in terms of our broadcasting. And we're running out of time now, so I'm not going to go into it too much. But we need to try and work out how to do the first live broadcast from the deep sea. And so I drew this little map. No one had really done it before, so it proved to be quite difficult. Found someone who knew how to transmit video and data through the water optically. So we needed all these transmitters and everything else going on. And to make it happen, as you can see there, you've got two problems. One is that all these systems, the ship has to maintain position without moving around very much. So it needs to hold station. So you've got to basically conduct a ballet from the surface with all these under things going on. Worse still, you've got two things on strings. You're trying to conduct the Bolshoi ballet, but with puppets. Somehow we managed to do it. We did the first live subsea submersible-based broadcast, the first live subsea newscasts, and the first subsea presidential address. And our partners, Associated Press, estimate that over half of the world, 3.5 billion people, watch coverage of it. It just goes to show, I think, and this is the point of what I'm trying to say today, is that if we can do it, if we, as a tiny little charity in Oxford, started a few years ago, 3.5 years ago, without any money, without really knowing what we were doing, to be able to pull together the kind of partners to do this, to go and help protect an area of ocean that is twice the size of the entire United Kingdom, to find a new zone in the ocean, one of the largest habitats found in the world in decades. If we can do it, then there must be hope. And that is the simple story of Necton and First Descent. And if I may, I just want to leave you with some words from President of Seychelles, Danny Faure, who made an impassioned address to the world from the deep sea around his country.
From 124 meters below the ocean surface, it is a privilege to address you, citizens of the world. This is a historical moment for my country, Seychelles. The sea has a special relationship with all of us, and it is clear to me that it is under threat like never before. It is vital that we have more data, more information to clearly chart our way forward. This issue is bigger than all of us, and we cannot wait for the next generation to solve it. The time to act is now.
Thank you very much.
Can we have James back in as well? Just quickly, Oliver, what is the single biggest threat to the oceans?
Us.
Us. And is climate change or debris?
Yeah, I mean, all the human impacts, which are the heat that we're producing. So, for example, if we just look at heat as a microcosm, the amount of heat that we've produced is now causing our oceans to warm up. If you warm oceans, if you warm water, it expands. So the warming oceans are contributing 70% of sea level rise. If the ocean hadn't acted as a buffer for that heat, our atmosphere would already be 35 degrees Celsius hotter already.
So it saved us. It's going to give that heat out at some point, though.
Yeah, it's gone somewhere, and it's affecting everything.
Amazing. Thank you, James. Do you want to come on up? No. Go on. He's coy. That was brilliant. Two fabulous presentations. And I'll kick questions off because I'm allowed to. And I'm going to pick up something that you said, actually. You said, Lady Oliver, you said something that often rattles through my mind about the people that sit not necessarily behind us, but are less visible. Yeah. And I'm really interested in, for both of you, those people, you've both got amazing partners and supportive systems that sit there. And you both touched on it, James, really emotionally, actually. How do you make sure that those people who are more behind the scenes, how do you make sure that they get some light and not all the heat?
Pass the buck, thanks. Jeez. No, you go for it. Let me think about it.
Funny you should mention that. I know the influence that Laura has in my life, and these are my kids. That's her. Before we got married, we got that shit on. And my job right now is to make sure that happens because she's a big influence in Feck Perfection. So we literally just before we got on the plane to come here, signed a contract for the follow-up book, which is a deeper dive into the idea of the things that made you weird as a kid, make you great today, and it will be by Laura and James Victori.
Brilliant. Lovely.
To be honest, it's not something I've been very good at in the last few years because to do this has just consumed so much of my energy and everything else. And that's one of the hardest things, is never to lose focus of that and to try and leave it at home, really, and to be able to give your partners and your family space to be with you. Otherwise, you're just in the space constantly, and it's relentless. And to be able, if you bring that pain and not the pain, but the weight that you're feeling as you're trying to battle through some of these journeys into your home, it can become devastating.
And to use an analogy, at pressure, underwater with a fire in your cabin.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fucking scary. Been there. Okay, anybody from the audience got any questions at all? If you raise your hands, I'll pick one or two. I have more, so there's no pressure. Yep, here, please. Wait for the microphone. Thank you.
Hi, it's for James predominantly. Do you feel that all creative people have an element of craziness? Is it a given, or is it something we should all just get past?
The first line in my book says that we are all born wildly creative. Some of us just forgot. I don't think it's just limited to creative people. I think so. When I was just a mook in Brooklyn, just starting out as a designer, I used to hang out at this I'm a bar fly. I got to admit it. I like to drink. So this bar was where the sanitation workers, when they got off work, and the cops, geniuses, politically astute, opinionated, funny, and as a kid, I'm going, I could make these guys into amazing designers if I could kind of, I think everybody is wildly creative, and I think the biggest thing that stops us is our fear, in a number of different ways, but yes, our fears, and I'm happy to chat further by the fire. So let me know.
Oliver. Yeah, I mean, I think from the perspective of exploration, we're all creative because we're all explorers. It's that curiosity on the wall outside. If you see a closed door wanting to go through it, you're entering a journey of creativity, of discovery. And you just look at kids. I'm lucky enough to have two little girls, 6 and 4, and they are madly and insanely creative, always asking questions. And we all had it, and a lot of us have lost that sort of sense of purpose or that sense of exploration. And we're all explorers. Every time that we want to open a closed door and go through it, we're going on a journey of creativity, of discovery, of imagination. And it's all within all of us. The more mad it is, the better, I think. But
love it.
Super. He's a smart guy.
Yeah, we've got a question in the middle by the camera. Wait for the mic. Thank you.
Hi, this is more to Oliver. I think when you first started, you said that it was slightly alarming that we're all sitting here so calmly, given what's happening to the environment. So if you were to give each of us a call to arms and tell us what we should do, what do you think on an individual level each one of us could do?
Holy fuck, that's a big one, isn't it? A bit above my pay station. But I mean, I hope, with the little story I've been able to share today it's a question of hope. It's hope is based on having a dream. Martin Luther King, it's a bit trite, but Martin Luther King didn't say I have a nightmare. He said I have a dream. So quite simply, find what that dream is, have hope, have belief, and as you said earlier, just fucking start, get go. We haven't got time, so just get on with it.
Brilliant. Just start. That takes us back to you as well. Martin Luther King nearly never gave that speech,
Did he? Why?
He'd given it a lot in his church, and his elders, when it came to the big event, his elders had said, "We've all heard about it. Enough." So we start, and if you can Google it, you can find the full speech, and he starts off talking about something else.
Really?
And then you can hear his congregation behind him. They're just, oh yeah, oh way, oh, we're all giving him this. And one of them just says to him, where they could feel the audience slipping. They said, tell him about a dream. And it just went bang and delivered the speech, him and maybe Baldwin, the speech of the century. Yeah. Utterly incredible. Anybody else? Anybody's got any questions? Yes, we'll go two in the middle there, next to each other. Thank you.
This is one for Oliver. What do you think is the biggest barrier that you find to affecting change?
Political will. I think, the decisions that need to be made to ensure there is a resilient ocean need to be driven by political decisions to implement 30% protection by 2030, both in national territorial waters, but also across the high seas. The high seas represents about half of our planet in terms of surface area. And under the UN law of the sea, that belongs to you and I, people of the planet. And yet, how does that actually work? How is that being influenced? It's really not. So it's the political will and the political mandate they would argue that they need, which comes from us. But ultimately, it comes from political will and courage more than anything. And that's where Danny Ford, His Excellency Danny Ford, President of Seychelles, is so brilliant. He is a voice. He is dynamic. We need more of them around. We need an army of people like him.
And I'm actually going to take that, thank you, and just spread that over to you as well, James. The biggest barrier, you talked really eloquently about our addictions to normal and our addictions to suffering. I also think there's an addiction to restarting as well, which is the third thing. How do we overcome our barriers to stopping or managing those addictions?
I think the story I talked about, Lina Jensen, that's her name, Line Jensen. Follow her, amazing. But especially if you are from Copenhagen. I have so many stories like that. So many people who I have kind of helped let them understand that they have a voice. And when you take authority over your shit and control it, and stop trying to be... She came to me because she wanted to be a designer because she needed a job because she needed money. And I said, that's stupid. You're awesome. Just go fucking be that, right? And I think what happens is we fail to realize that the ramifications of our sound, the sound of our voice, and how powerful that is, and how moving it is. And I think if more people took that authority, no money, this is fucking crazy. But if you took authority and said, this is what I'm going to do, once you start putting it out into the world, your excitement breeds excitement in others. Your vibrations get other people vibrating. That's just how it works. If you're going to understand that and just start and move, you can change. You can not only fix your shit and change yourself, you can change the world.
Brilliant. Sometimes when you vibrate at a higher frequency, others actually fall away from you rather than get attracted to you.
Super. That's great.
There's a question here as well.
Hi, I'd just like to thank both of you. I'm actually a creative and part fish, so it's been a really good start to the lectures for me.
You're a mermaid?
I am, yeah. Oh, well, part fish. Don't like to say mermaid. So this goes to Oliver, actually. I live in Australia. We got the Cape and Seaview survey that started out from there, which is the not submersibles, but the 3D cameras. I don't know if anyone else has heard of it, but Google got on board with them. And I really believe, as you say, those resonations and joining together, it's really important that we collaborate on these things. Have you worked with those guys? And have you got anything to say about collaborating with different projects that are doing this all around the world? Are you doing that? Yeah.
Yes, collaboration is obviously absolutely critical. Now, Catlin, as it was then, sponsored this incredible undersea project using 360 cameras to document the health of the reefs. And they did that brilliantly for a number of years. Their next project, which they then took on, was the work which we did on our first expedition, same organisation. Visionary leadership to be able to see what could be done. And it's all about collaboration, and that goes to the heart of what we do. We have 50 different partners, and they start with working with coastal and island nations. And we go meet with the president of a nation and say, look, this is, what do you want to do? What are your needs? What are your priorities? Can we help? And that it has to come from the top, that sort of leadership and their commitment. And then from that basis, we then create 12, in Seychelles' case, 12 partners locally, and then supported by 38 partners from government, from business, from civil society, from academia, and from media. Just bring everyone together with a shared and collective purpose. And that's the key thing about alliances. It's starting from a similar basis and saying, look, do we all have the same purpose and the same commitment to what we're trying to do? And it's that simple. Our client's the ocean. Do we unite around this purpose? If so, let's work together and let's do it.
Placing the ocean as a client is utter genius. You could place creativity as the client as well, potentially. But I've got a really quick question for you. I'm going to hog you for a second. As we race towards immunity from antibiotics, the focus is shifting towards the bit between the land and the sea for new origins for antibiotics. We're finding all kinds of stuff that we didn't know was there. How much of a threat is that to the oceans, and how much is it an opportunity to protect what we've got?
There's two things to it. One is the impact of antibiotics and medicines and other agricultural, chemical, biological runoff into the oceans, which is devastating. If you look at Bay of Bengal, for example, at the moment, there's a huge amount of agricultural runoff that's going into the Bay of Bengal, which is causing a massive dead zone to be created there. And that dead zone, when you create a big dead zone, it sucks all the air out of the water, which creates the conditions for nitrous oxide to be produced, which is no laughing matter. Come on, we're getting better. But the release of nitrogen just in the Bay of Bengal is likely to change the nitrogen cycle on our planet, so it's devastating. The flip side of that is that the deep ocean, because animals have had to adjust to the pressure there, is a really important frontier for extremophile hunters. So people looking to try and find new drugs from animals that have adapted to those environments. And if you look at the frontline drugs for anti-cancer, Taxol and other things, that's coming from a deep sea sponge. So the challenge we now have is to discover what's there before we destroy it.
Brilliant. Well, I've got time for one very quick question, then we have a few announcements. Yes, at the back. No, middle, at the back. Thank you.
Hello. What do you know now that you didn't know 25 years ago?
We'll go to James first.
25 years. Wait, let me do the math. No, I was actually pretty hip 25 years ago. I was the shit then. I am the shit now. No, I think that I didn't know that I was a powerful, sexy motherfucker. And if somebody would have told me that, then if some authority would have told me that, that would have been pretty helpful.